Okay, I am going to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Monday, October 23rd, 2023, and ask staff to call the roll, please.
Council President Curry. Here. Alder Verveer. Here. Alder Vitiver. Here. Alder Madison. Here. Alder Evers. Here. Alder Rummel.
Present.
Mary of Quorum.
Thank you. Our first item is general public comment. We do have public comment on item 14, but no general public comment. So we'll go on to disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals from Finance Committee members on today's agenda? Seeing none, then we will move on to the consent agenda. We have no registrants on any item except for item 14, which we will, of course, exclude anyway. Are there other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda? President Curry.
I'm sorry.
You're not, okay. You're just ready to make the motion. Okay. Any other items that alders wish to have excluded? Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to exclude for updates and questions, item 10 and item 11.
Items 10 and 11 will be excluded from the consent agenda. Are there any other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda? Seeing none, then President Curry, a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. For the benefit of those who don't generally follow along, that means that for items 2 through 9 and then 12 and 13, the Finance Committee is recommending adoption of the recommendations as printed in the agenda. On then the consent agenda, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor on those items. And we will go to item 10. Item 10 is Legistar 80423, authorizing the inclusion of a land use restriction agreement on the purchase and sale agreement between Core Spaces and the City of Madison concerning property at 405 West Gorham Street. On item 10, President Curry, a motion, please. Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adopt item 10. Alder Rummel, questions on item 10?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted an update since we last talked about this. It's been a while to see how the memorandum of understanding with the university is working. I'm not sure that's part of this exact LURA, but just kind of the big picture. When I posted this on my blog, I got 2 different people asking me questions about it, including the media. So I thought it'd be worth, raising it here. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Looking at the maps to see which of you would like to speak, or Alder Verveer. All right, so we'll start with Director Mikolajewski.
Thank you, Alder Rummel. So what's before you this evening is the approval of the LURA for the project at 405 West Gorham Street and surrounding properties. And basically what this does is it outlines the principal terms of the agreement to provide discounted units largely targeted to students. And so the transaction will provide about 10% of the beds, which is about 165 beds within the building, at a discounted rate that is 40% below market. And it would do so for a period of 40 years. And it would have, as we've had in previous transactions with the core group, it'll have a agreement, a memorandum of understanding with the UW Office of Student Financial Aid. And it'll be the UW Office of Student Financial Aid that will direct students that are eligible to receive a financial discount towards these discounted beds. The resolution before you includes a couple of other items. In particular, it includes some default provisions and some liquidated damages if the developer were to default on the provision of these lower cost units within the project. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Matt. Alder Rummel, additional questions?
So this is separate from the land use approval, correct?
Yes.
And what if, how are we tracking what 40% of the market rate is? Is that something that we collect or that the developer prepares and gives us?
Well, if you think of, let's fast forward to when the project is completed and operating. So let's think maybe 10 years down into the future. There will be a rate that the typical student renting a bed in the building will pay. Through the memorandum of understanding between the UW and the developer, the UW will forward students on to the developer who are eligible to receive the discount, and then those students will receive a rate that's 40% below whatever the market rate is at that particular time. Should this?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yep. No, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Revere, questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I don't have questions, but just wanted to point out that the development team has registered available to answer questions. So if Alder Rummel or any other colleagues have any questions of them, they are available to assist as well.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on item 10? Right, seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Or Alder Revere?
Yeah, thank you. Let me just, since this was separated, Mayor, provide one other piece of information besides thank you to all involved, city staff, of course, and the development team. I am excited about this. It is largely modeled after Core Spaces development that is well under construction now on the 300 block of State Street that they coined the OLIV. And I just wanted to share with colleagues that development now is largely pre-leased in terms of all of the low-cost beds. So that shows that there clearly is a huge interest and, moreover, need for these kinds of resources. So it's really absolutely fantastic that the city and developers were able to come together to provide this density bonus and this underutilized city parcel to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. No other alders in the queue wishing to speak on item 10. So is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 10? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. Come to item 11, which is Legistar 80348, authorizing an amendment to the 2023 capital budget on purchase of service contract between the City of Madison and Sasaki Design for the Lake Monona Waterfront Project. On item 11, President Curry, a motion? Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adopt item 11. Alder Rummel, you had questions?
Thank you, Mayor. This project I know has been in the pipeline for a long time and there's a lot of enthusiasm, but I'm not really clear how much the Finance Committee or the council at large has really, given, like, are we entering the weeds now that we should be paying more attention to what it is we're buying? I just kind of wouldn't mind an overview of this project and what it is, this amendment for purchase of services gets us. I understand on some level it gets us planning around the underpass, but just in general, the big picture of where we're at would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. We have Mike here from Parks, who's the project lead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Alder Rummel, excellent question. I'm happy to provide an update on the project. So hopefully committee members are familiar with the Lake Monona Waterfront Planning Initiative. So this is an effort to provide a master plan for 1.7 miles and 17 acres of public green space along the shore of Lake Monona. Last year, and within the fourth quarter of last year, the city held a design competition to hire a planning consultant team to develop the master plan, working with the Lake Monona Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee. So that's a 13-member committee that's been designated to be the decision-making body for master plan development. And as of January, the ad hoc committee has been working with the Sasaki team. So through that competition process and through the committee's evaluation of the three teams, they identified Sasaki as being the most qualified to carry the project forward. And the committee and the team have been working closely over the last several months to refine that master plan based on the public input that was received during the design challenge, and that we continue to receive throughout the process. So the amendment before you is really looking at, well, just to back up just a smidge, is that the initial goal was to have the master plan, which includes a fairly robust report, a supporting document to that plan. The original intent was to have that submitted to the Common Council for their consideration by the end of October this month, pardon me. But recognizing that we've had some developments and some unique features come forward that require further investigation and study, and also just recognizing that a little additional time for preparing that draft report and getting the report thoroughly reviewed by the committee, we're asking for a contract extension to continue to work with Sasaki and for the city to continue to work with Sasaki with the ad hoc committee, with the goal being to have the master plan and the report submitted to the council in January of next year. So we are also working closely with the city engineering to ensure that both the John Nolan Drive reconstruction project is coordinated with the master plan endeavor. And so I think that's kind of it where we're at. And that's the amendment before you. There's a little bit more additional scope built in there, just recognizing some of these, as I mentioned, some of these unique features that have come forward through the refinement process. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other further questions.
Thank you, Mike. Additional questions, Alder Rummel?
I guess I know this is like such a big deal and everyone loves it, but I'm just wondering, when will we start talking about how much it all costs? What's, the environmental impacts, what's reasonable, what can we accomplish? I just like we're going to amend the budget and then say, yeah, go forward to study the underpass, fine. But at some point is that in January when we get that full report that we will have a more in-depth discussion?
Yes, that's my understanding. So again, the committee has been wrestling with those very items that you listed. What's of an appropriate scale, what's feasible. Part of a component of that summary report will be an order of magnitude cost schedule, so we can start to see some actual numbers to the proposed features. And again, it's the intent here is a master plan document that would guide development over potentially decades of development along the lakefront. We know that we are also planning for a preliminary phase, the first phase, to correspond with the John Nolan Drive reconstruction. So we're seeing the full benefit of consolidating construction work along the causeway within at least a synchronized time frame. So that's a component. But all those items you're talking about are going to be conveyed in the report, and so it'll be the current intent is that it would be introduced in January. It'll go through the committee referral process, so it'll likely go through all the other important city committee reviews, and then come back to council for action, where I think that there'll be an opportunity for a lot more robust discussion on that. The budget amendment that, again, that's before the committee tonight is really looking at providing the resources so that the ad hoc committee continue to work with the design team, recognizing we have extended their time frame, and ask for a few additional areas of investigation.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions on item 11? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of item 11? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 11. That will take us to item 14. Item 14 is the operating budget, Legistar 79918. And just want to run through our process tonight. We'll start with public comment and any questions for public comment. And then I'm going to ask finance staff to give us a brief orientation to the amendments and how to track the impact on the levy. And we'll have a little conversation about that, and then answer any questions there might be. Then we'll move to a motion on the overall budget and move through each amendment as proposed. I will ask the sponsors to make the motion and speak to the item before we move into questions, discussion, and then a vote on each one. If there is not a finance committee sponsor, I certainly hope that those alders are with us online and can speak to their amendments. And then when we have reached our levy limit, I will ask for a motion to place the balance of the amendments on file. And we can reconsider those issues at council if alternate funding becomes available or is found. So just to orient folks to that, and the other thing that I did want to mention is that the order of the amendments is alphabetical. Finance staff consulted with council leadership and came to that decision that things would be presented alphabetically. All right, that said, we will turn to public comment. Our first registrant on item 14 is Regina McConnell, of Straubel Court, East Madison Community Center, to be followed by Joanne Weber, to be followed by Daniel Stadelman-Scanlon. Regina?
Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon. My name is Regina McConnell, and I am the Assistant Director at the East Madison Community Center. I am representing the Neighborhood Centers Coalition. Many of my fellow coalition members are here today with me, either in person or on Zoom. Nate Shore is here from Bayview, and Laura Gundlach from Neighborhood House. Thanks for coming, guys. We are here today in support of Alder Evers' amendment, adding $73,000 across 3 program areas, including those at neighborhood centers. Best estimates are that centers would receive about $34,000. Just a bit of history about how we got here. Jim O'Keefe, in his budget request, proposed a 10% COLA be added to 3 program areas, including school-age youth programming funds that neighborhood centers receive. Jim also proposed another $105,000 in funding for new programs and program expansion. In these tight budget times, we very much appreciate that the mayor made room in her operating budget for a 5% COLA. Of the $146,000 in the mayor's budget, about $68,000 goes to neighborhood centers for school-age youth programming. Amendment 8 would raise the COLA another 2.5% for a total of 7.5%. The fact that all members of the Finance Committee have signed on as co-sponsors of Amendment 8 is a testament to the fact that you understand the critical importance of the work neighborhood centers do. Our work with children, youth, and families in some of Madison's most challenged neighborhoods has a direct impact on the entire city, including violence prevention, employment, education, and closing gaps and eliminating disparities in order to help build healthy, strong neighborhoods. As the 2024 budget process continues to unfold, both tonight and in the coming weeks, We hope that if additional money becomes available, it would be directed to further increasing the COLA so that it reaches the 10% level city staff recommended. Believe me when I say neighborhood center directors understand tough budgets and the hard choices they entail. We are truly appreciative of the work and dedication of city staff, the mayor, and the members of this committee. Thank you for your service and thank you for your support very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Joanne Weber of Poynette, Wisconsin, to be followed by Daniel Stadelman Scanlon, to be followed by Wayne Eugene Musser Jr. Do we have Joanne?
Yep, Joanne, you should be unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Joanne.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Joanne Weber. I am a perinatal public health nurse and an employee of Public Health Madison and Dane County. I also serve as the president of AFSCME Local 895. I am, however, speaking today on my own behalf, and the thoughts I'll be sharing are my own. I thank the Finance Committee for the opportunity to speak here today in support of the 1.0 Prenatal Care Coordination, or PNCC, public health nurse position that's included in Agenda Item 14. It's listed on amendment as Amendment number 15, the PHN-PNCC position. I'm excited to talk to you briefly about the PNCC Nurse Home Visiting Program because I think the program and the work we do is powerful and very important. The Public Health Department in Madison and Dane County has been providing PNCC nurses to work one-on-one with parenting people in the community for over 25 years. It's a program that has a significant impact on promoting healthy pregnancies and better outcomes and futures for the Madison and Dane County families that we serve. Now more than ever, we are seeing an increased need for perinatal support, and for the first time in the 5 years that I've been working in the program, we have a wait list which is consistently growing and which is overwhelming our ability to effectively connect with clients in a timely manner. When I first started as a nurse in the program 5 years ago, we were able to call newly referred clients within a few days, and clients with especially urgent needs were prioritized for an immediate call. We had the capacity to meet with a client in crisis that same week if necessary. Now we still reach out to new referrals within a few days to triage them and link them to other appropriate resources if possible, but we then have to tell them it might be up to several months wait before they hear back from a nurse for enrollment into the program. What makes this program so significant and the wait list so troubling is the often urgent situations of the clients we serve and the importance of being able to connect with them quickly. We call these clients high risk because they face health issues, economic hardships, and many other challenges that can put their well-being and their pregnancy at risk. Pregnancy, unfortunately, doesn't wait for us to have the capacity to connect with clients in need. Clients regularly self-refer to our program. Sometimes they might be folks that are new to the country with very limited social support and haven't even yet connected with healthcare. Sometimes they're Dane County residents struggling with homelessness. Sometimes they're in domestic abuse situations where they feel powerless. We often hear from or about clients when they are well into the third trimester of their pregnancy. We sometimes even get referrals from hospital staff after a baby's already born and when there is significant concern about a new parent's mental or physical health or their ability to successfully parent a newborn without support. This program is the only one in the county that provides that postpartum support. It's important to us, it can help prevent tragedies, and it has long-term positive impacts. It's crucial that we return to a staffing level where we can resume this type of immediate support and intervention. So clients reach out to our program when they are in great need of support. Healthcare and social service providers reach out to our program when they know a client needs immediate support. A quick connection can make the difference between a good outcome and a tragedy. The window to connect with a pregnant client is brief.
You have about 30 seconds left.
Perfect. It doesn't work to have a months-long wait list. The ability for a perinatal nurse home visitor to connect quickly with a client is immeasurable in terms of the impact that connection can have on promoting successful pregnancy, healthy infancy, connection to resources, and overall future family health. We partner with many community organizations, including JFF, DAYS, Unidos, ConnectRx, Centro Hispano, Roots for Change, Behavioral Health Resource Center, OB Medical Homes, many other services. We connect clients to DHS programs so they can get resources available. Yep, our goal is to connect with every single pregnant person in need of support in Madison and Dane County in a timeframe that is fully impactful. I ask for your support of this public health amendment to fund an additional nurse per PNCC so this valuable work can return to and continue at its most effective level. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Daniel Stadelman Scanlon of Union Street, to be followed by Wayne Eugene Musser. Daniel?
Hi, thank you for listening to me this evening. I'm here to support the same amendment that Joanne just spoke about, Amendment 15, and also I'll speak a little bit about number 16. I'll start with number 16. This is the for the public health specialist position for the fetal infant mortality review at public health. If you're not familiar with the fetal infant mortality review team, it's made up of partners across the community that focus on reviewing every fetal and infant death that occurs in Dane County. This review team looks at each case and learns what are the specific things happening locally here in Madison and Dane County, what are the breakdowns, the missed opportunities, what is working, and what needs to be improved. The team takes these findings and has an action network to implement changes. And this team cannot continue with a data abstractor. This is an individual that gathers all the information for this team to review cases. This actual data abstractor is the most crucial role for this team, and the department has struggled to have somebody in this position. It's not a full-time position. So I really support this amendment to hire a person into this role, and we need a dedicated full-time staff person to continue this work. As you're probably well aware of, the unfortunate and health care disparities and inequities that exist in our community. The other amendment that I'll just echo what Joanne was speaking about was the public health nurse amendment supporting families with higher birth outcomes. One thing that Joanne didn't share, but I'll pass along, is that one of the programs that we have is unique in that it has a community advisory board that is made up exclusively of clients and graduates. This board provides as a platform for the clients to provide valuable input on this work that the nurse home visitors provide. I think she talked about the strong partnership that we have with many local agencies to support the families. I think, one piece is that the nurses are in a unique position. They're doing home visiting. Many of the other support services here in Dane County or in the city of Madison are not specifically going into the home environment. So the nurses are an ally. They can assess the family's needs, their mental health, child development, weight
about
gain
30
with
seconds.
the infant. Pardon me?
You have about 30 seconds.
Thank you. Unfortunately, these programs, and I've been working here as a City of Madison and Dane County employee for over 20 years, we haven't previously had a wait list in these services. We've had 370 referrals, a growing demand for these services, in 370 referrals since last November. That's like 33 referrals a month, and our current workforce is unable to meet the needs. I'll close by sharing a few quotes from the families.
If you could wrap up, please, that's your time.
Thank you for bringing a lifesaver. We love this program. You give me hope for a better tomorrow. You help me have the confidence to change my life for the better. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Our last, two more registrants wishing to speak. Wayne Eugene Musser Jr. of Fitchburg, to be followed by Jason Murko. Wayne?
It's me. I'm Gene Musser. I'm the third person to speak in terms of the amendments to the public health. In the football world, this was a penalty called piling on, and so I will try not to waste your time reiterating what Joanna so articulately said about these programs. I'm a retired cardiologist. I worked for UW at Merida Hospital. I was chair of the Medical Examining Board of Wisconsin. I'm currently a member of the Board of Health of Madison and Wisconsin, Madison and Dane County, and I'm here personally and not representing any of those entities. So I don't have to explain what these programs are. They really work tremendously with pregnant women who are in the nurse-family partnership. It's first pregnancy, low-income people. The reason I really care about this stuff is that for a lot of reasons, but in my medical practice, I had occasion to deal with women who came into the hospital late in their pregnancies with bad stuff wrong with them. And what happened with them is they either nearly died, their kids would nearly die, the fetuses were not well taken care of, and so they had higher risk of all kinds of complications. They would have done much better if their care had been assisted by a competent nurse who could help to facilitate the management of their many problems and also get them in touch with the kind of health care they needed. Our nurses see all kinds of trouble: blood pressure, diabetes, STIs, including more syphilis, victims of trauma, people who are victims of problems of poverty, homelessness, food, and other things. They do a tremendous service to help these people. So I'd like to thank Council President Curry and Vice President Figueroa-Cole, as well as Alder Wheely, for their sponsorship of the amendment. Our nurses help the most vulnerable pregnant people in the community, and I think that we really owe it to them to provide the Public Health Department with the services and the resources we need to take care of them. And so I urge you to adopt this amendment, which I think is number 15. You can read it in your thing. The other, which Dan just spoke about, is a case abstractor for the FEMR, that's a fetal and infant mortality review. There are about 25 or 30 stillbirths and about 30 or so one-year infant mortalities in Madison and Dane County per year. While the reason for those is generally known, this program, which is the FEMR, allows us to look specifically at what the causes are in our community. We need the group needs the data to understand why these kids are dying so that they can develop processes to try to prevent the problems.
About 30 seconds.
And they need to have data to do that. Public Health Department has tried processes to get the data which have not been adequate, either repurposing nurses, limited term employees, or currently a retired person from Milwaukee. Having a data extractor allows getting information from the medical examiner, doctors, clinics, hospitals, police, and other reports to allow the FEMR committee to understand what went wrong and to try to devise processes for improvement. Thanks for listening. See ya and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Last registrant wishing to speak is Jason Murko of District 13, representing the Affordable Housing Action Alliance. Jason?
Hi, is my audio coming through?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, hello, Finance Committee members. My name is Jason Murko. I'm here on behalf of the Affordable Housing Action Alliance, or AHA for short, which is a local grassroots group of housing advocates, tenants, developers, and elected officials that advocates for affordable housing and also services that assist tenants and people experiencing homelessness. So AHA is in full support of Amendment 14, which would fund a public health position dedicated to tenant education and capacity building. I do also understand that there may be changes to the amendment under discussion. Kind of regardless of those details, I guess the message that I want to convey is that AHA supports providing resources for this type of activity for tenant organizing / capacity building and tenant education. Like renters in Madison are facing a lot right now. Rents have been increasing substantially, which has a lot of potential to displace folks who are more vulnerable. There are also some prominent cases of apartment complexes with really serious safety and maintenance issues. And, you know, kind of tied in with all this, right, there are pretty clear racial equity considerations when it comes to who's affected by, you know, these issues and others as well. So this type of work, tenant organizing, capacity building, education, can bring together neighbors to build collective people power, you know, both as a way of supporting each other, you know, learning about their rights, making changes to things they have control over, and also to demanding better from those with more power, like landlords. So this work creates more stability for tenants and helps build healthier communities where people are connected to each other. So we hope that you'll approve this amendment to assist the many renters in the city of Madison. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Those are all of the registrants wishing to speak on item 14. Are there questions for any of the registrants? Seeing none, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And we will go on to a brief orientation from staff to the amendments before us, and particularly the levy limit and how we are tracking. And I think Is that you, Christine? Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and walk through the amendment file that was attached to the Legistar item for the budget and just talk briefly about how to read the summary table and follow along with the levy limit. So this is the PDF file that's attached to the Legistar file. I'm going to first walk through what's in the table and then talk about the summary table on top. So each of the amendments has a row, and the row has the amendment number, agency number, amendment title, sponsors, and the total revenues, expenses, and taxes on the average value home impact for the general fund. And then there are two further columns for other funds if there are fiscal impacts in other funds. In this case, there are only two technical amendments that have a non-general or library fund impact, which you'll see in amendments 3 and 4. So each of these has a line item. If you click on any of them, it'll take you to the specific amendment that has additional details on the narrative, which major expenditure category the funding will be used for, and then an analysis. In the summary table up top, at the very top line, we have the executive budget. So the net expenditures in the executive budget for the general and library fund is a little over $404 million. The expenditures are balanced by general fund revenues and the levy, which is 286, 273, 456. So this levy number is slightly below the maximum allowable levy under what the city can raise via the levy. That maximum levy amount is below this kind of darker bar, which is $286,497,699, which means the difference between what's included in the executive budget and the maximum allowable levy is $244,000. So the Finance Committee can add through amendments up to 200 expenses that would be covered by this additional $244,000 in levy capacity. 224, sorry, I keep on mixing up those numbers. So this is how much you have available to add. So then the second line is how much is proposed by the amendments. So in total, the Finance Committee amendments add almost $1 million of expenses to the budget. Some of these expenses are offset by revenues. So the Fire Department amendment for the CARES program, which is amendment number 12, there's $275,000 in expenses that's offset by general purpose revenues, so that the total levy impact of the amendments is $719,000. So 719 is higher than the 224 available, and the difference is this $495,600. So that's just a brief summary of how to interpret this table. So again, the maximum levy capacity is this line here, this 224 for 243, and the following line with the negative 495, 594 is how much the proposed amendments exceed what's available. I also sent all of the Finance Committee members an Excel file of the spreadsheet so that you can track along, or you can just use a simple calculator. If you're interested in specific amendments, you can add up the net expenses to see how that compares against the 224, and if you're able to vote for all of the things that you want to, or if you'll have to prioritize how you'll use your votes. And we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Christine. Are there questions for Christine at this point? Seeing none, I'd like to just jump up a level and provide perhaps a little context on the budget overall. Christine referenced the room that's available to us under the levy limit. That, of course, is because the state legislature has seen fit to dramatically control the amount that we can raise in local revenue. And to limit not just the amount that we can raise off of the property tax, but also to severely constrain what kind of revenue we can generate through additional fees or charges. So this is the consternation that I experienced in putting together my executive budget, and I assume you are all experiencing now in trying to decide how to vote on these amendments, is entirely due to the state legislature. We have for over a decade now been year after year finding ways to address this problem. We have found those ways yet again this year. Next year is a very open question whether we'll be able to do that again. But at the end of the day, we are constrained by those limits, and there is simply not enough money to provide the services that our community deserves. So I just want to place that context. A few other pieces of context. One is that just under 70% of our operating budget is people. So staff, salaries, benefits, it's about 70% of our operating budget. So multiple alders, in fact, possibly a quorum of the council, have asked me, where could I find additional money in the operating budget to fund the thing that I want to do? Well, let me say first, I have the same question, and that was what we wrestled with in putting together the executive operating budget, and we were not able to fund all of the things that we wanted to fund. I believe sincerely, every agency in the city is struggling, is understaffed, needs more positions to provide services to our growing city. We have over, again, the previous decade or so, found many efficiencies, found multiple ways to raise revenue and to save funds, and have run ourselves through most of those options. Certainly, if folks think there are additional efficiencies we can find, welcome that conversation. But the truth is there's not a lot left to cut without cutting people, which means cutting services. And so the challenge before us collectively, both this year and next, is to make decisions about the level of service that we want to provide to our community. And there is no magic source of funding coming, and we have to make tough decisions about what we want to prioritize in the budget. And so I don't know that that's helpful, but I think it's important to remember that larger context as we approach tonight's discussions. I'll pause again and see if there are any questions for staff or for myself before we move into the amendments. Alder Field.
Thank you, Mayor. A question for staff. I'm thinking ahead to next year's levy limit, and I know we won't know what percentage increase that is yet. If we pass an operating budget this year that is, say, $100,000 lower than this year's levy limit, are we held to that reduced number when next year's levy limit is calculated or not?
Thank you for that question, Alder Field. Any amount below the maximum levy limit up to 1.5% of our total levy can be carried over to the next year. So if it's $100,000, for example, that's well below that amount, that would carry over and add to the what would otherwise be calculated as the capacity for the subsequent year.
Is that just for 1 year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm worried that we're faced with next year. I guess always next year is always worse than this year, but I think maybe next year will be worse because the loss of the federal money for care, for COVID relief. And so what I worry about is that half of these amendments and much in the budget as proposed is adding staff. The mayor says we're growing city, we're understaffed, but if, how do we balance adding staff with future cuts in service that, are hinted at? And at what point do these cuts in service become, real and not just like, the thing that's looming over the hillside?
Well, Alder, I don't know that I have a perfect answer to that question, but I can tell you how I have thought about it over the past several budgets, and that is that at some point, our departments just simply can't continue to function with insufficient staffing, and the city has real needs, and through, I guess what I would describe as strategic additions to our staff, my budgets try and meet those needs. You are absolutely correct that continues to sort of provide additional challenge in future years. That's always going to be true. But at the end of the day, I think we have tried to strike a balance between adding additional expenses, finding potential additional revenues, and starting to think not just year by year about the operating budget, but over a span of multiple years, and try and plan a little bit more long-term for what future operating budgets will look like. And that's what we've been doing for the past several years, is to really work with finance to project out what things will look like in the future and what that means we should be thinking about now and what tools we should be saving for future years.
Thank you. I hope my fellow finance committee members will, I don't really know what to tell ourselves. Like, there's all these really interesting ideas before us and we can't do them all. And maybe as we go forward, we should try to be clearly, stating what we think is a strategic addition, as the mayor put it, and that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. We have no other alders in the queue at this point in time, so we'll move on then to the amendments. But first, President Curry, a motion on the executive operating budget, please. Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adopt. We'll work through the amendments one by one, except I would like to ask unanimous consent to consider amendments 1 through 5 together. These are all technical corrections and adjustments. Is there any objection? Seeing none, then, President Curry, a motion on amendments 1 through 5. Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adopt amendments 1 through 5. Are there questions on those amendments? Is there discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of amendments 1 through 5? Seeing no objection, amendments 1 through 5 are adopted unanimously. And we will go to Amendment 6. Amendment 6 is in the Attorney's Office. Alder Verveer, a motion?
I move adoption.
Is there a second? It's moved and seconded to adopt. Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just acknowledge at this time what difficult decisions we have before us here at the top of the meeting. And I don't believe I need to go into a rather lengthy description of this amendment, as I know City Attorney Haas provided each member of the Finance Committee a overview of the amendment, complete with Excel spreadsheet earlier today. As I think about this, Attorney Haas, perhaps that should be sent to all alders. If I'm correct, it was only sent to those of us on the Finance Committee, since obviously there are many non-Finance Committee alders here and likely interested. So beyond just acknowledging and directing my colleagues to that amendment that email about this amendment. I want to further provide the background that this idea came not only from Attorney Haas, but from Planning Director Wachter and Economic Development Director Mikolajewski. All three of those gentlemen are here in the chamber tonight and can answer any questions you might have about this. But it's because of the very high amount of legal work that's required for development projects involving the city currently, in the past, and anticipated in the future. Historically, we've always had a full-time assistant city attorney that's been dedicated with his portfolio to handling economic development matters, such as TIF deals, for example, and bonding and so forth. With the increasing amount of our activity and the increasing complexity of our activity, the current incumbent in that position, Assistant City Attorney Robles, has stated that he would greatly appreciate additional resources if possible. So this comes to you from all of those that are directly involved. You'll see that the fiscal impact is remarkably tiny, considering how we compensate our assistant city attorneys. As you see in the amendment, it's because for the first time in a meaningful way, the plan moving forward in the OCA is to bill their time to capital projects, for example, TIF, and other capital projects, to cover the compensation for not only the current ACA, but also the additional ACA position if this amendment is adopted. So I urge my colleagues' support, and obviously remind one more time that there are several of us that could answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there questions regarding Amendment 6? Or is there further discussion on Amendment 6? Alder Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm reading the amendment text and then also referring to the email sent by Attorney Haas. I just would like some help understanding how the full impact of, or full cost is offset by using, where did I see it? Capital and, I'm sorry, I'm too many screens. Yeah, just an understanding of how they were able to provide the $17,000 number instead of the total cost.
Attorney Haas?
Sure. Thank you, Alder. As the amendment and my email tried to outline, the entire salary of the new position would not be funded under the general fund. So we would bill it to TIF budgets, Affordable Housing Fund, land banking budget, depending on the projects that both the current and the new attorneys are working on. So they would be required to allocate their time to different budgets, just depending on the project that they're working on. Attorney Robles indicated that his time currently is probably at least 40% could be allocated to those other budget lines. We just have not done that as a standard practice in the past.
Thank you. And in your email, you say expect the percentage of work related to those items will exceed 40%. What happens in that scenario if this? Well,
it's really just a way of accounting for that in a way that we are confident we can meet that 40%. We're I think being a little conservative. We don't want to overstate it and then come back and say the actual impact on the general fund is more than we anticipated.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This could be for Attorney Haas and also for the two Matts. We currently do this kind of sharing with CDA and planning staff and with some of these different revenue sources. Is that not correct?
Yes, so engineering does this on a routine basis. Real estate does this with most of their positions where they're working on large capital projects and they track time and bill directly to those capital projects. So yes, this is a practice that other agencies use.
And just then also as a follow-up, and perhaps this is for the other Matt, could you talk just a little bit about the bottleneck and staff capacity more explicitly with just the caseload of the number of projects, development projects, including South Madison and other key areas of the city?
Sure, happy to. Thank you, Alder Evers. I think some of the key changes within EDD over the past couple of years have been the inclusion of some additional small business development programs, which require providing funding and closing, which requires some work on the part of the city attorney's office. Historically, OBR programs really didn't require that work, but some of these larger dollar values that we're working with do require city attorney's office to get involved. And then on the real estate side, we are certainly very active at several very large city-led real estate projects that require work from the city attorney. We also have been increasing the amount of TIF projects and TIF project plan amendments and new TID districts in recent years, and that trend is likely going to continue in terms of amendments and utilizing TIF. And then finally, what we're seeing increasingly is private developers that are doing work that aren't necessarily receiving city funding are requiring us to complete real estate work, and that oftentimes requires assistance from the city attorney's office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Verveer?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just one more point I wanted to add, and that is, as Alder Evers certainly is well aware, last fall he successfully offered a council amendment that was adopted unanimously that provided $75,000 in outside legal fees for this sort of work. And so if this amendment is adopted, the hope is that we would not have to in any extensive way use outside legal services for this sort of work. We're currently doing that, as I understand it, with both the public market and the Lake Street parking garage redevelopment and some of those South Madison projects that the Alder just referenced. So that's another rationale for adopting this amendment, is to save on, again, the outside legal service costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. We have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak on Amendment 6. It's been moved and seconded. You know what? I think we'll just do roll calls for everything, anticipating disagreements. So on Amendment 6, all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Council President Curry. Alder Verveer. Aye. Alder Vitever. Aye. Alder Madison. Aye. Alder Evers. Aye. Alder Rummel.
Could people speak up? I'm not hearing any votes. Thank you.
Sorry, Alder Rummel, we have not had people turn on their mics for votes, but Dave, if you can just repeat the ayes and noes.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay.
6 ayes.
So that amendment has 6 ayes. I could have asked for unanimous consent, sorry. And so it will pass. And we will move on to Amendment 7, which is in civil rights.
Did you want the levy?
Yes, but before we hit that, we would like to have an update on where we are on the levy. Christine or Dave? Okay.
So as Christine said, there was $224,243 of remaining levy room. After that adopted amendment, there's $207,243 left.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Alder Madison on Amendment 7, then a motion.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second? Alder Vitever will second. Alder Madison, do you wish to speak?
I would I think Alder Figueroa Cole would like to speak to it.
Right, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alder Madison. Okay, so this is one of two amendments that are centered on tenant rights that I have put forward. Collectively, we have come a long way finding creative ways to fight the state's rules that put tenants on disadvantage, on constant disadvantage against living conditions and landlords. So as part of that, we made a few changes in 2022 on that. One of them was creating a protected class for against retaliation of tenants. And we also added civil rights and building code and housing complaints to the civil rights office. So since 2022, we can see clearly the impact that the changes that council has made for those protections. We can see that clearly on the data for the past few years. Since 2022, we have received 43 complaints that were filed under the building code complaint, and which 39 of those were filed in 2023. And we also have filings for the housing complaints that have showed that there's an increase of we had 66 complaints in 2022, and to date, we already have 127 complaints. Since 2018, we had 3 positions for investigators in this particular agency, and that hasn't really changed. There has been some challenges over the years to keep the capacity for those positions. Throughout the pandemic, for example, they were running pretty much at a with a -1 person on their staff to cover all the complaints. But now in 2023, we really see in the numbers increase again. They're fully staffed, but yet they have two new people working with them, and the training for this particular job takes time and experience for people to be able to fly solo. So even though they are fully staffed at the time, they don't have the full knowledge-based capacity for investigators to be doing the cases on their own. So as of today, for 2023, we have a total of 234 cases. 87 of those cases are open. 30 of those cases have been assigned. 50 are in a holding queue, waiting for them to be assigned to people. So they don't have enough people to get them assigned. And 67 were investigated and closed. Out of those 234 cases, there was 127 cases that were related to housing and 39 that were related to building codes. So it's really clear to me that we are doing a lot of good by creating all these safety nets for our tenants, but we need to be able to back that up with putting the support that the agency needs to manage the caseloads that continue to increase. Last year alone, these changes were made and people were made aware of it, but as we know, communication is not always optimal. So even though that the entire city is not aware of these new changes, they're still getting a lot of cases. And as this continues to grow, they're going to continue to need the support. So I encourage you all to please consider funding that position to allow to not have a backlog, for example, of those 50 cases that we have right now, to allow to make sure that each case is assigned and that we are able to resolve the cases at a lower rate. Today, we're running between 60 to 90 days to close cases to make sure that we can go back to a better closing and resolution timelines. That's all I got.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Wahilihi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have to repeat what Alder Figueroa has said. This amendment came to the Finance Committee last year. It wasn't approved. And I hope this year you will approve it, because the data that has been shared, but also the workload that has been shared, is very profound. And as you are thinking which item to vote for or put as a priority, please consider this item as a need not as a want, because this is really needed position for the Department of Civil Rights. So I hope you will consider voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any additional questions or discussion on Amendment 7? Alder Vitiver?
I'm just going to say that it really pains me that I'm going to vote against this. I really, really want there to be an additional investigator. I think we need it, and I voted for it last year. And the only reason I'm not voting for it is because we are in such a strict financial state here, and there are other items on the amendment list that personally I do think have higher priority. So I'm very, very sorry that I won't be voting for this because I do think it is incredibly important.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers?
Ditto to what Alder Vitiver said. These are hard choices, but there are some other amendments that, to me, feel more critical at this time. It's hard to say those words. Attack me if you must, but I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. We have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. So on Amendment 7, all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. And I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Council President Curry? Alder Revere? Alder Revere says aye. Alder Vitiver? Alder Vitiver says no. Alder Madison? Aye. Alder Madison votes aye. Alder Evers?
No.
Alder Ever votes no. Alder Rummel?
Aye.
Alder Rummel votes aye. That's 3 ayes, 3 noes.
With 3 ayes and 3 noes, the amendment fails. And we will move on to Amendment 8. Amendment 8 is in the Community Development Division. Alder Evers, a motion, please.
Move adoption.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded by Alder Revere. Alder Evers, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, briefly, Mayor. As the Assistant Director for the East Madison Neighborhood Center, Community Center spoke eloquently about this. CDD Director O'Keefe had asked for a 10% increase for 3 program areas, and we're facing the challenges of a tough budget. The mayor was only able to offer a 5% increase. I believe that the work that these neighborhood centers are doing, particularly personally in the area of school-age youth, I'll remind my colleagues that we looked at the B list and potential allocations that would go to school-age youth, and we voted on last summer as a possible allocation of funds if those funds were available. This additional money would not just go to school-age youth, but would also go to early childhood intervention and older adults. 3 critical areas, though, I must say. If I could have gotten the full supplemental request up to 10%, I would have, but knowing how tight the budget was, my amendment was for a 2.5% increase, taking it to 7.5%. That amount is $73,000. My colleagues have all agreed to co-sponsor. I trust that they will vote accordingly, and I ask that they do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any additional questions or comments on Amendment 8? Alder Wahili.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are there any staff to talk about this program?
Director O'Keefe is here.
Okay. So my question is for 3 organizations that we want to put in this funding. How is it different from the other programs that the community service department can do RFP in terms of the programming? So can you talk about more about this particular amendment?
Alder, as Alder Evers noted, this increase would provide base budget funding across 3 distinct program areas. One of them, school-age child and youth programming. A second is early child care, and the third is older adult services. So we conduct separate RFP processes in each of them, and the funds would be applied through that process.
And I don't know, a couple of months ago, we did approve some of those programmings for the community neighborhoods, correct? Youth.
Alder, I think what you're referring to is a resolution that in which the council adopted funding allocations for the school-age child and youth programming. And that action took place at a time before, because these are for contracts that begin on January 1st, 2024. So that resolution was adopted at a time when the council could not know what funding would be available in 2024. That's what the division's supplemental request and the executive budget, and now Alder Evers' budget amendment is addressing, and that is how much money is available to fund those allocations, fund those contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. There are other alders with questions or discussion? Seeing none, then on Amendment 8, those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and Dave will please call the roll.
Council President Curry. Aye. Council President Curry, aye. Alder Verveer. Aye. Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitever. Aye. Alder Vitever, aye. Alder Madison. Aye. Alder Madison, aye. Alder Evers. Aye. Alder Evers, aye. Alder Rummel.
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye. It's unanimous.
With 6 ayes, that amendment will pass. And can we have an update on the levy limit, please?
With the adoption of that amendment, the remaining levy limit is $134,243.
Thank you. And on to Amendment 9, which is in direct appropriations concerning the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Alder Verveer?
I move adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Rummel will second. Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. This amendment provides a very modest increase in our membership in the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, but moreover, if this budget amendment is adopted, would ensure that the city retains its longstanding membership in the league. I'm sure many of you saw the most recent issue of the Municipality magazine. The cover story is about the 125th anniversary of the league, and I learned for the first time that the league was actually founded by the city of Madison, by a Madison mayor at the time, and that the first staff, or secretary as they called it, of the league, interestingly enough, was a Madison alder 125 years ago. All the years I've served in City Hall, I've never recalled a time when our membership in the league was controversial. I can't say that is the same for the former Alliance of Cities or the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where a former mayor chose to in one case at least, no longer participate or renew our membership. But in the proposed executive operating budget, apparently there is a proposal to no longer clearly retain our membership in the league. And I have every reason to believe that that has something to do with the city's very poor performance in the recently enacted Wisconsin update to the shared revenue laws. And the mayor can certainly speak to this. Your Honor, you can speak to this certainly and explain if that was the only rationale. But aside from the league's legislative services, then I will note that they have doubled their government relations staff just in the last year. And despite our disappointment in Madison's clearly, I think, deliberately penalized outcome in that shared revenue reform, if you want to call it that, the additional $3 million that we'll anticipate next year is wholly inadequate, as we all well know. The League has always provided a variety of other services to our city beyond legislative advocacy at the state legislature. Among others, I would say probably the agency that has, from my observations, used them the longest and most relevantly is our Office of City Attorney, where the League's legal team has long advised municipal attorneys all over the state, including our city attorneys here and our assistant city attorneys, as to all aspects of Wisconsin municipal law. The Wisconsin League of Wisconsin Municipalities annual Legal Institute has long been almost entirely attended by the staff in the Madison City Attorney's Office, where, at least in the old days, the office almost would shut down the week of that institute's gathering to participate and take advantage of very low-cost continuing legal education opportunities. They provide weekly meetings for city attorneys around the state that Attorney Haas could speak to. They provide listservs for all of the attorneys. They provide amicus brief services to the city of Madison and other members historically over its history at the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I could go on and on about the breadth of services that they provide. In fact, the first article that I turn to in the municipality magazine when we receive it each month is to look at the legal column. I find it always very interesting. I'll also point out that we currently have our own representative on the board of the League. I don't know if she was engaged at all, Alder Wahili, in the concerns about our lack of potential representation by the League at the state capitol this past year. But in the past, we have, from time to time, had alders serving on the League of the board, which I think has provided a great liaison role. So as such, several members of the council did attend the League's annual conference in Green Bay last week. The reason, by the way, that Alder Wahili is not a co-sponsor of this amendment is because, out of abundance of caution concerning potential ethical conflicts in this regard. So I think it would be a real shame if we dropped our membership in the League. I find it to be valuable. We would be, as I understand it, the only city in the whole state that would not be a member. We've been a member historically for, as I say, 125 years. And many of us, I think, actually a majority of the council, we had to be very careful about open meetings law violations, and some of us had to stay outside the room and not go in until other colleagues left. But the majority of the council had a briefing with League staff earlier this summer, which I found very interesting and fruitful. So I think it would be a shame, and I would, if we dropped our membership, and wish that instead we would make a concerted effort to work with them and emphasize that our needs, we believe, are not being currently met by the League. And I don't know if those concerns, as I say, were articulated to League lobbyists during the most recent biennial budget conversations at the Capitol. But I think we have clearly got the attention now of the League leadership through the executive operating budget, and again, hope that we can work cooperatively and collaboratively with them. Lastly, let me say, because alders don't interact with our contracted state lobbyists, we do have a contracted state lobbyist that many alders are probably not aware of, Mayor, and that's the great Nick Zavos. For those that didn't have the opportunity to work directly with Nick as I did, he formerly was a deputy mayor under previous administrations, and in the past, even CDD Director Jim O'Keefe was in-house legislative liaison. when I first came to City Hall and got to meet and work with the great Jim O'Keefe. He was the city's legislative liaison housed in Mayor Soglin's office. So I trust that there is, if this amendment is adopted, that there is still sufficient funding to engage in Nick's excellent services. I certainly hope there is, but if there isn't, I'm certainly eager to have that conversation as well. So I urge my colleagues to retain our membership in the league. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Madison?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I have questions, but it's more so I'm still a little bit confused about our membership. Because my first thought was, is this something that alders, for example, can we split our alder accounts to come up with? You know, like, is there another way? I would prefer, for example, to give up a portion of my budget towards this versus, I don't want to support this, I guess, because I'm not necessarily engaged. I don't know how to be engaged. Not that it's not a good thing, but if there's another way where if alders want to be participating and be engaged and be informed, and however, folks are making use of this, I just think that I would be willing to give up some of my budget to do so.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. Is there objection? Oh, Alder Harrington McKinney?
Let me unmute. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I did attend last week in Green Bay, and presenting was our planning department. And I mention this because they spoke about the updated zoning laws. They spoke about the missing middle. They talked about the housing shortages in Madison and how they were alleviating and bringing our codes up to, the 20th century. It was amazing that the room was completely filled with individuals from other municipalities asking, how did Madison do it? And Madison was the flagship of moving forward toward what we were talking about as it regards to housing strategy. And so it's not an individual alder, it is the representation of Madison. And in that 3 or 4 days, you learned about other municipalities, you learned about their struggles and what they were moving forward with. We went to the homeless entity, and there was so much good information. And I came back refreshed and understanding why our planning department was making the decisions that they were making, and it made sense. And so it would be a shame, I think it would be a shame if we disconnected ourselves from this organization, because not only do we bring information and sharing what we're doing here locally, we also find out what's happening in other municipalities that we could bring back to Madison so that we can continue to provide the services that our residents can expect. And so I would hope that this body would support us remaining a member of the municipality. I think it would be a shame if we disconnected that connection. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Bennett?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm just hopping in. I'm understanding that we're on the amendment regarding the league, correct?
Amendment 9.
Regarding the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, right. So I just wanted to hop on here real quick and offer that I would hope that we could support this amendment. I know that some alders here have not participated yet, or with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities or with the National League of Cities. But speaking of a point of someone that has engaged with them, I've found that the professional development opportunities and opportunities to connect with other cities doing the same work that we are doing has been quite beneficial. So I found value in making those connections that I otherwise would not have, and helps in my work as an alder. I also believe that it's important to share information across platforms with different municipalities that otherwise wouldn't be offered. Now, if we were to cancel our subscription, then like alders can still attend conferences and stuff like that, but it would cost significantly more than if we include this in our budget. Also, I believe that seeing that we have within our budget, we pay for many other subscriptions, including conferences with, or not conferences, but organizations for mayoral associations, for other city county liaisons. Like, I think that this is just an obvious choice for us as a council to engage with. So I think that like in a budget of this magnitude, a $7,000 ask is not that much and should be supported.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I have a question. So I'm glad to hear that some of my colleagues have found the leak to be beneficial. I also have not felt that I've personally benefited from a lot or know how to access until there was a meet and greet earlier in the year. But what struck to me during that meet and greet was the services that are available to like other city staff. And so I guess I have a question of Attorney Haas of the thing that stuck out to me the most was like the consultation around housing law and being able to have other attorneys and like reviewing other changes and how it affects other municipalities. If this service wasn't continued, would that have a huge impact on you and your staff?
Thank you all. Do you mean communicating with other municipal attorneys? Is it?
Or whatever service
Sure,
it is?
sure. So we could certainly, reach out to other municipal attorneys. Myself and other attorneys in our office have developed relationships with attorneys around the state just on a variety of issues. It is more convenient, I will say, to do that when we have access to the league's municipal attorney listserv, where we can send out a question or respond to a question to every attorney that subscribes to the listserv. And I think Alder Vivier also mentioned there's a weekly Zoom meeting of municipal attorneys around the state. Whoever wants to join on any given Wednesday, they can join. And we talk about issues that people may be having in common, or sometimes one municipality has dealt with or is dealing with a unique issue that somebody else has already dealt with. I will say, it's a two-way street. We contribute to those conversations. I get asked quite a bit about election law matters just because of the experience I've had. But I will also almost every week, bring up a question that maybe another attorney in our office is dealing with. Sometimes just to get a second opinion and to make sure that we're not missing anything. So it would not be, we would still have those individual relationships we can draw on. It just makes it more convenient, I think, to be doing it through those league avenues.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say, too, that I attended it, and I thought it was really beneficial to see how other cities tackle the same issues, where there might be housing crisis that we're all facing, to see how they're doing things differently. So just wanted to piggyback on what my colleagues said, and definitely in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Madison for the second time.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess now that, so if I or we supported this, who's responsible for updating us about the, like involvement? Because if you don't hear about what we're a member of and how you can use it and what's coming up, then you sort of, 6 people are using it versus 20, for example.
Yep. Thank you, Alder. I think perhaps that's a question for me. And even if it's not, I would ask if there's any objection from me speaking from the chair. Seeing no objection, I want to clear up a couple of things. First of all, we are not talking about the National League of Cities. The city is a member in good standing of the National League of Cities. I believe we collectively derive great benefit from being a member, including having been awarded multiple grants from the league and doing, I think, really excellent work, particularly in the area of out-of-school time and other issues around youth and education. This is specifically about the Wisconsin League of Municipalities. The other thing I'd like to clear up is that, in fact, all of the league's events are available to non-members. There is a minimal, in some cases I would say minuscule, additional charge for non-members. If I was running the organization, I might approach it differently, but nonetheless, there'd be a very small fiscal impact for the city to pay the non-member charge versus the member charge. They're really not that different. Alder Verveer is absolutely correct. I made this change in my executive budget because I do not feel that the League of Wisconsin Municipalities is representing the interests of the city of Madison. It is not solely about the question of shared revenue, although that was perhaps the straw that broke the camel's back. I have felt the entire time I have been mayor that the league did not represent our interests as a city in the capital, and that is in part because they have to represent such a broad array of municipalities in the state of Wisconsin. They certainly, I believe, did not fight for us in the shared revenue battle, but that is not the only objection that I have. Despite having additional legislative staff at the league, they regularly fail to update membership on issues that I believe are very much of concern to municipalities that touch on local control. I think to Alder Madison's point, you all don't know what's available to you from the league, and it is their responsibility to communicate with their membership about what's available and how you could take advantage of that. I understand that our staff have regularly engaged with them. I think recently, rather than the league advising our staff, it has in fact been our staff advising the league and supporting them, which of course we don't get credit for off of our dues. And perhaps if they would like to pay us an hourly rate, we might not be paying dues. But it has definitely been at least a two-way street of benefit there. I have tried over the entire course of my time as mayor to work with the league staff to represent to them that I didn't feel like they were representing our interests or working on the right issues, and with, I think, no avail. And when, in fact, the shared revenue situation came up, for me, that was just the last straw. That I just do not feel like they're representing our interests, and I do not feel like I had been heard in that space when I was objecting or asking for better representation. I will say that, yes, as a matter of fact, when it came down to money, I did get their attention and have talked several times to league staff about my objections, and it appears that they now are perhaps taking them seriously. So perhaps those of you on the Finance Committee would feel like that's enough. We've got their attention and they will change now. I will say I personally do not want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I would like to see the change before we rejoin as members. And finally, I will say it is not just Madison that is frustrated with the league. There are multiple other cities that either have not included
league dues in their budgets or are not planning to renew their memberships across the state. And in addition to those, there are multiple mayors that I have talked with that feel like they are not getting a real benefit from the league at this point in time. So certainly not just us. Even cities who benefited from the shared revenue situation, I think, are not happy with their representation. So the Finance Committee will do what it wishes to do with this amendment, but I just wanted to be on the record with why I took this rather dramatic step. Those of you who know me know that I believe firmly in communication between elected officials, between municipalities, and so this is sort of unprecedented and dramatic for me to say that we should withdraw from such an organization, but it is a measure of my frustration with this particular organization and their inability to change and to serve the interests of the city of Madison. So, Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to speak to Alder Madison's comment, and that was a very valid comment because as we go to not only this event in Green Bay, but as we go to, other opportunities to learn and gather information, we should come back and report what we learned, what we held. And so if we're not doing that, that was very valid. Thank you very much for bringing that up, Alder Madison, because we should be sharing. I learned more about housing. I learned more about community building. I learned more about homelessness just by sharing and being in a room where people were talking about their challenges, their successes, how they spent their ARPA money, things that possibly I wouldn't have even considered. So it was a good experience for that. And given reference to what the mayor said is that calling them out or calling them in. I think that we're at a point, if we are not heard, we should do as we should do what we do. We call them in. Those are the things that we are missing. And this is an opportunity for the city of Madison to step up. And the presentation that the planning department did was excellent. And so I see when Madam Mayor was talking about we have supplied information and supported them because literally the room was standing room only when the planning department was talking about the innovations and the changes they were doing toward our municipal government. And so it is something for us to consider. And again, I will end, let's call them in rather than calling them out. And a good way is that, yes, we are renewing our membership, but these are the expectations that we have and we want to be heard. And so I would ask that the colleagues on the Finance Committee consider this as an opportunity to get some of the things that we need and some of the answers that we need and some of the things that we need met. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Alder McKinney for that phrase of calling them in. This is really the first I've heard about like some of the mayor's concerns. And, I think that's fair that we pay $324 is proposed to spend on this organization. Well, I've been receiving their magazine as an alder for years, and I think it's one of the benefits that I just want to call out. Like every month, there's some article, about potentially something that I'm learning something about that I would not maybe learn what other communities are doing. And I believe just this weekend, like 1/5 of the council went to their conference. So obviously, Alder Wahili is doing a really good job of representing the council and getting them involved. And I want to appreciate her work on that. And so I think, perhaps the past hasn't been always what we wanted to achieve, but I do believe that we should pay to renew our membership. For example, I started thinking about our lobbyists, our city lobbyists. And years ago when I was on the Common Council Executive Committee, the lobbyists would come in once or twice a year to CCEC and tell us what they were doing. And I'm not sure has that been happening? I mean, I don't really know that I see anything from our lobbyist. And I'm not saying that Nick doesn't do stuff. I'm just saying it's, more than like League of Wisconsin Municipalities that, needs to communicate with all alders in the city. So I think it's worth $7,000 to contribute to this annual membership, and I hope you'll support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. You have but to ask if you want a presentation at CCEC. Alder Vitever?
I'm CEC, but thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I'm sure they'll take you up on it. But it used to be a thing, it wasn't something you had to request. It was part of their duties, just from my recollection. Thank you.
Alder Vitever.
Sorry, I'm really confused. In the finance department analysis, it says the executive budget included 49.9, and then I thought this was like our makeup because we had like misbudgeted because the membership dues went up. But it sounds like what you're saying is you don't want to pay the dues at all. So
that's correct.
Does that mean then that we now, if we vote this down, that we will now have another 49,900 to play with?
Alder, my executive budget moves that into the city memberships line. So absent other action by the council, it would be available for city memberships, which there's a number of different things that we are members of or could be members of. If you wanted to repurpose some of the city memberships funding, you would have to offer an additional amendment to do so. Not tonight, but
Thank you.
at the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Madison, I think you're at the third time now, Alder.
I just wanted to say I hear what everyone has to say, and I do feel like there's some benefits, but it also feels like those benefits are accessible without the membership. Especially, it seems like their magazine may be online, and it seems like this is something that if I wanted to go to their conference or an event, I can pay for it out of my budget or out of my own pocket at least. So I'm just going to vote no, only because there are things still coming up that I want to vote yes for, and this doesn't really get at to the level of service to residents, because we have access to this kind of services that they apply or that they offer across the city and county already.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Bennett for the second time.
Sure. I wanted to say that, I'm glad that the mayor has now shared, the concern about finding value in it. Reiterating, aside from like myself as an alder finding value in it, I feel as though some of their lobbying efforts, particularly that which allowed for a historic $525 million investment in housing.
I'm sorry, Alder, can you repeat that? I was conferring with the finance director.
Disappointed that at any point in this process, in terms of transparency, the mayor could have engaged us alders to see if any of us were finding value in the league before publishing the executive capital budget or making that decision. Because maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And in terms of other memberships, if we want to look at things that we're finding value in, we have specific city memberships in the Dane County Cities and Villages Association, the Mayor's Innovation Project, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the Wheeler Report, the Wisconsin Coalition Against Homelessness, and the Wisconsin Diversity Procurement Network, which we all budget for. So I personally haven't found value in those memberships. So maybe we should review if other alders have found value in those memberships as well while we're looking at things we're finding value in. But I say that to say that I think that we should not discount the alders that have found value in this. I also think that it is not realistic with our current like $2,100 allocated to our Alder accounts to expect us to pay for extremely expensive, or not extremely expensive, but like expensive, the expense of attending conferences and that type of thing. Maybe we should, if this were to be taken out, we should allocate those monies to we should distribute monies equally amongst alders for the purposes of paying for conferences and flights and meals and all of that, because that is simply not budgeted for currently in our council budgets, amongst other things that we have to pay for as an expense of this job, which we are not properly compensated for. So I just want to put that out there. I think it's pretty obvious where I stand, but I believe that we should take into account that if other alders are finding value in conferences, then maybe we should substitute that monies elsewhere in our budget.
Thank you, Alder. I want to correct my answer to Alder Vitever. My budget actually moved the funding from the memberships line to the state liaison line in anticipation of potentially needing more services at the state level if we were not members of the league. But the principle stands. The money would just be in the state liaison line. All right. Point out this is a $7,000 amendment. Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I too was going to mention it's the state liaison line, so thank you for that. The other point I just want to make in response to those wondering how they can learn more about the league and get more involved, I have been on their email mailing list for decades, I suppose, at this point. So I receive emails from not just that hard copy of the magazine in the mail once a month, but I receive emails from the league at least once every other week, if not weekly, a variety of emails about their current conferences, meeting offerings, publications, a separate email entitled The Capitol Buzz about what's currently affecting municipalities at the state legislature. So I apparently the league does not automatically subscribe members of the Common Council to those email lists. So I just encourage my colleagues to check out those email lists and other resources on the league website. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to be voting for this. I don't think that conferences fees are not zeroed out by membership. We still have to pay. There might be, from what the mayor says, a modest reduction. But I'm going to support the mayor and her stand to get the league's attention to work more aggressively on behalf of the capital city of the state, given what happened recently on shared revenue. And I don't think the impact on individual alders will be severe. I think we as individuals can sign up for the email list that Alder Verveer mentioned. We as individuals can attend conferences. We as individuals can network with other cities if we so choose. I think in this tight budget, this $7,400 by the end of our evening can be used in other ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. We have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of Amendment 9, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, then I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Council President Curry? No. Council President Curry, no. Alder Verveer? Aye. Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitever? No. Alder Vitever, no. Alder Madison? No. Alder Madison, no. Alder Evers?
No.
Alder Evers, no. Alder Rummel?
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye. 2 to 4.
With 2 ayes, that amendment fails. We'll move on then to Amendment 10, which is in the Economic Development Division regarding the seed grant program. Alder Madison, a motion, please.
Actually, I want to pull it only because I think I got what was necessary with that.
So Alder Madison will withdraw Amendment 10. Is there objection? Seeing no objection from the body, Amendment 10 is withdrawn. And we'll move on to Amendment 11, which is in the Engineering Division regarding rain gardens. Alder Rummel, a motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Move the amendment number 11, reimbursement of rain gardens on private property.
Is there a second? Alder Verveer will second. Alder Rummel?
Thank you, everyone. This was initiated by Alder Slack, but she could not make it today, so I am going to try and stand in her stead. We also have Phil Gabler on the call able to answer questions if you have any. So this is an initiative to expand our education and improving our critical city infrastructure to allow people to participate in a pilot program, which would have a parameter set up by engineering where they could get some funds for installing on their private property a rain garden. This would be a way to improve biological diversity on property and, be something that will improve neighborhoods all across the city over time. It's a 5-year pilot, so it would end in 5 years. And as Alder Slack would say, it's really easy to push off the climate change as it comes, and at us. It's not like a huge disparity right in your face, but it's something that we really need to help ourselves as alders become more aware of, and also our constituents to see what some of the things that they can do on their own property to help ameliorate some of the impacts of stormwater. So I'm not sure that this will pass because of the conversation, but I thought I would put it on the table so people could talk about it and think about what things that we can do in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Are there questions or discussion? Alder Vitiver.
So I guess I have questions for staff. I mean, when our street was reconstructed, we had the opportunity to put in a rain garden in our yard, which we did. And I think we paid a nominal fee for that. So just a question of, is that still an ongoing program, and how does this differ from that?
Our city engineer is here.
And also Phil Gabler. This is Phil Gabler.
Oh, we have both.
I'll defer to you, Jim. Oh, I was going to say that program is still ongoing. That's our terrace rain garden program that allows homeowners and with eligible terrace space to opt into a terrace rain garden that would treat stormwater coming off of the street. And this program differs in that this would be retrofits on private property, most notably treating roof water, so coming from downspouts, to disconnect that from the stormwater system.
Thank you. Alder Verveer, questions or discussion?
Questions. Thank you, Mayor. I'm curious if Jim, Phil, or for that matter, finance staff or the city attorney can identify a problem with including this proposal, but funding it entirely on the stormwater utility and ratepayers.
I'll take that one. Thanks, Alder Verveer. This was a topic that was brought up, and this is something that has been discussed as we've been looking at flood solutions throughout the city too. That really, for funding coming out of the stormwater utility, that has to go directly to funding the public stormwater utility and capital improvements and things that we're doing as a public utility. For reimbursements of something on private property, especially something that could be scattered in various locations throughout the city, we felt it was best to have that come out of the general fund as opposed to the stormwater utility for that reason.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
So how does this relate to the natural garden ordinance that we currently have on the books? Will this have to follow the ordinance?
I think perhaps I'll take that one, given my past experience with those ordinances. Alder, no, there is a specific natural lawn designation that private property can apply to be in, but then there are also just the general rules about yards and what you're able to plant in yards, and that would be inclusive of rain gardens, as long as they are not interfering with the vision triangles or the height limits that are described in the ordinances and the guidelines that cover what you can plant in your yard. But I think there's plenty of folks that have rain gardens in their yards.
So are they regulated by the ordinance though?
They are not regulated by the natural lawn ordinance, Alder. They are covered more broadly under our ordinances and that speak to what types of plantings are allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. There are additional questions or discussion on Amendment 11? Seeing none, then on Amendment 11, Alder Rummel?
Yeah, just one more question, because I think, and thank you, Mayor, when Alder Revere asked a good question, like, why not put this in the stormwater utility? And I spoke today with Phil Gabler and Alder Slack, and he mentioned some potential changes coming that I don't know that I want to say are for sure coming, but maybe, Phil, you could tell us about some state initiatives that to our stormwater utility. Just more of an informational while I'm thinking of it. Thanks.
Sure. So what we talked about today, and what I think folks should know, is that money that's spent through our stormwater utility is under the kind of regulation of the Public Service Commission. So any rebate or benefit adjustment that we provide to a private resident needs to be tied to direct services that they no longer receive. So there's the cost associated with having a storm sewer pipe in your street, and they're designed to take the rain, up to 4 inches of rain. So if you manage up to 4 inches of rain on your private property, you can then apply to get an adjustment and not have to pay for that storm sewer pipe in your street. Right now, it's basically complaint driven, but there is some legislation that is on the horizon where they may regulate all aspects of stormwater utilities underneath the Public Service Commission. So everything would have to go through their kind of, as I understand this law, basically they'll pre-approve all of the things that could happen. And if you then look at the return on investment of building a rain garden in your yard only through the lens of stormwater management and the economies of scales of how pipes convey flow and detention basins treat water, it's very, very hard to ever have any sort of rebate that would be a true incentive to residents. I hope that answers that question thoroughly enough. Right? Things are still very in the beginning process, but this would work outside of those rules, essentially.
More ways the state's messing with us. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. So then on Amendment 11, all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Council President Curry? No. Council President Curry, no. Alder Verveer? No. Alder Verveer, no. Alder Vitever? No. Alder Vitever, no. Alder Madison? No. Alder Madison, no. Alder Evers? No. Alder Evers, no. Alder Rummel?
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye.
With one aye, that amendment will fail. We'll go on to Amendment 12, which is in the Fire Department regarding the CARES program. Alder Vitever, would you move this one? Sorry.
Move to adopt.
Alder Vitever will move. Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Revere will second. Thank you. Alder Vitever, do you wish to speak to this one? Or would you like me to?
It'd be delightful if you would.
All right, thank you. Technically, I am the lead sponsor, but generally, I don't move things. So thank you, Alder Vitterer. I think most of you are aware of the actions that the county executive has taken with respect to the CARES program in his executive budget, which contains not only funding for additional positions in the 911 center, which we are very grateful for because that is really the best next expansion of the CARES program, but also creating a fund to which other municipalities in Dane County could apply to support the expansion of CARES into their municipality. What we realized after the county executive's budget came out was that in order for us to actually work with those other municipalities and work with the county on that expansion, we would have to have a place in our budget to support accepting funding. So this does not involve the general fund. It does not involve the city funds really at all. It just leaves us room if a municipality applies to the county and is granted funds and wants to purchase CARES service from the city, that we would be able to do that. So happy to answer questions or to have finance staff answer questions, but that's the intent of this amendment. Are there any questions or discussion on Amendment 12? Seeing Alder Figueroa-Cole.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I was multitasking. So again, this doesn't impact the levy at this moment, right?
That's correct.
Did you say that part? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any additional questions or discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and Dave will please call the roll.
Council President Curry. Council President Curry, aye. Alder Revere. Alder Revere, aye. Alder Vitterer. Alder Vitterer, aye. Alder Madison. Alder Madison, aye. Alder Evers. Alder Evers, aye. Alder Rummel.
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye. Unanimous.
With 6 ayes, that amendment is adopted, and we will move on to Amendment 13, which is in the Parks Division regarding youth and family parks programming. Alder Verveer, as a courtesy, would you move this one?
Thank you, Mayor. I move adoption.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Alder Curry will second. Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze, do you?
If I could quickly just say, Mayor, before you recognize Alder Miadze, that as you stated, this is a courtesy sponsorship by myself and on behalf of Alder Miadze, and I yield to him for an explanation and rationale of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Revere. Alder Miadze, do you wish to speak to this amendment?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, we all received a letter. I'm going to first try to refer to that letter from the City County School Collaborative Committee that sent it to all alders who, a couple of my colleagues on their tag, and Bill, and Dane County Supervisor Heidi and Jacob, and also President of MSD. Superintendent, of course, is on that committee that used to be the educational committee. So I said all that to say that what they have recommended as budget priorities, and they recommended from the city of Madison's education committee, that removing barriers to drivers' education, that they support their incremental efforts to expand access to drivers' education, like Dane County Drivers Education Scholarship Program, and operational Fresh Start programs that remove barriers to obtaining a driver's license. These programs should continue to be expanded while we are working to restore state funding and removing regulatory barriers that unnecessarily and attribute limited and workforce eligibility to teach driver's education in our schools. As you all know, driver's ed has been taken out of school. Warner Park Community Center is going to be one of those hubs to ensure that our kids start learning how to to drive again. And that, like I said, the educational committee that is now partner with city and MSD and Dane County. But I just had a few key facts finding. Says here from a study from University of Wisconsin and Milwaukee, says here mothers with young children receiving public assistance in subsidized childcare were twice as likely to find sustainable employment if they had driver's license. For their population, having a driver's license was more important for finding steady work than high school diploma. Another fact finding was teens from lower income neighborhoods are likely to obtain driver's license by the age of 18 than those in upper income zip codes. And youth of color, there are much lower rates of licensing. I can go on and on about this, but this is very, very, very important that we, I know a lot of people have supported the idea of having driver's license back into schools. But right now, since it's not something that's going to be done right now, I think this is important to have. I know that Warner Park has been working on this. So they're ready to start this pilot. So I know that people know that the work that Terrence does and Zach Watson. So there's the ones that really worked on it with parks. So I'm definitely supporting it. And also for the other things I propose, if you guys want to take it out of order and just approve one of these, I'm okay. But we talked about youth programming. Warner Park has done an excellent job, but as you know, they're struggling with funding with youth programming. I know that sometimes we put that under CDD and other developments, but as you all know, how people struggle, that some people don't get part of the pie. So I think this is huge to actually, and it's not that much money. When we speak about youth employment, I know there's a tight budget, but to me, the word equity in our city should be defined as really putting money in those underserved communities, such as Warner Park, that's been doing a great job throughout our city to serve the north side. So, yeah, I'm definitely just supporting the Warner Park Community Center. And to actually start this pilot that a lot of people are ecstatic to get on its way. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
I didn't realize my hand was up, but okay, I asked a couple questions. Thank you, Mayor. So is this for $10,000 for the driving education thing, or are we saying now that the $49,000 is for the driving education component?
No, the amendment is written, has a number of different items in it, Alder.
Correct. So, but I heard that we can remove the other things.
Well, apologies, Alder. You can't, but a member of the finance committee could.
That's not what I meant. That's what, yeah, got it. But that's what I heard. That is the intent to ask for $10,000 for 15 people to have driving classes, or is the owner of this amendment still wants to fund the 49,000? Like I didn't get that part of the suggestion. Like, where are we going with that?
Thank you, Alder. If Alder Miadze wishes to speak, and it looks like he does, he can address that. But Alder Curry is next in the queue. Alder Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question regarding the driver's education part. The last sentence says parental involvement will also be a requirement for participation in the program. Wondering if there's anyone that can speak to what that involvement would look like.
Thank you, Alder. I'll ask if there are any staff available to speak to that. In the meantime, Alder Miadze.
Yes, I was asking for the full 49,000 for the other programming. I mean, we saw how Parks Alive and other youth programming has done a fabulous job in our city as far as keeping our kids occupied and something to do. So actually, it was asking for everything that was allocated for certain Park Alive driver's ed, the dollar amount is listed there. But I was saying I would be okay. I mean, if we can pass, I understand that we have a tight budget. I would like all these passed. It's just 49,000, and everybody could see what is all listed. But at the very least, hopefully, some of my colleagues that serve on the education board can speak to this. That this, at least this driver's ed, is huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. We have CJ Ryan from Parks. Go ahead, CJ.
Hi, I wanted to answer the question about parental involvement. We're currently piloting the program at Warner Community Center, and we want to make sure that parents are involved with our youth, because the way that the driver's ed program works is that it is an online program and all of the modules are self-sufficient, and then the individuals go to the driver's ed course to do the in-person training in a car. As we pilot this, we're going to at first require that parental involvement, because we do want to make sure that the youth are successful and have a means to complete the program. I think as we learn more about what that looks like, depending on the age of the youth and our staff's ability to support the youth through the program, that may or may not change.
Thank you, CJ. I just ask folks that are on the Zoom to lower your hands so I know who's actually in the queue. Alder Figueroa-Cole, did you have an additional question?
Yes, I actually had two questions, sorry. And my second question was going to be, why is this on the Parks budget? Like that, I found it confusing, so I don't know. I guess CJ kind of explained that. Sounds like they're doing a pilot at the Warner Park location. But why isn't this part of Operation Fresh Start and all the other programmings that were mentioned? I guess I'm confused by that. Like, why is this part of the Parks budget?
Thank you, Alder Figueroa-Cole. I think that's an excellent question, and I would like to know the answer to it as well. CJ?
Thank you.
So one of the things that we talked about with the Alder was providing these services through Warner Park Community Center, particularly focusing on the folks that participate in our No program. And so since that's a program supported by Parks, that's why it would hit our budget. The other items that you see in this proposal are for Parks Alive and Movies in the Parks, which are programs that come through our division.
What was the program that you just mentioned? I'm sorry, the first one related.
The No program, it's at the Warner Park Community Center, the Kids Need Opportunities at Warner program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Madison?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question about process, about, it sounds like Alderman Yazzie mentioned about, he would be open to taking some things out. And I'm interested in supporting, at minimum, the driver's education. So I'm just wondering whether or not he'd be, open to substituting that to $10,000 versus $49,000.
I think the Alder's spoken to that.
Yep. So I would like to move a substitute to fund $10,000 for the driver education portion and pull out the rest.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Romo will second. So Alder Madison moves a substitute that would reduce the amendment to a $10,000 impact to fund solely the driver's ed portion. Did you wish to speak to that amendment, Alder?
Really, it's only because driver's education is something that I think most of us hear about on a continuous basis, and it's not slowed down about families' inability to afford the cost.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a follow-up to Vice President Figueroa-Cole's inquiry. Seems to me the question also should go to CDD as to why this isn't being funded through CDD so that it would be citywide. I am concerned that eligibility for this program would be limited to folks, to students at East High School, to people within a specific geographic area, as opposed to services that would be more broadly available on a basis of income eligibility throughout the city, so that young people who live at Bayview, young people who live at the South Side could also participate. So perhaps Jim or someone else in CDD could talk about funding that's been made available for driver's education through CDD and why should we change what we've done in the past?
Director O'Keefe?
So Alder, you're asking me why this funding wouldn't be used citywide? Is that?
No, I'm asking, I'm trying to understand the program funding that has gone out in response to RFPs and supporting various agencies, nonprofits in our community through CDD, I understand have funded driver's education. Is that correct?
There are a few, I think, for which driver's education is a component. I think of Operation Fresh Start as one. It's kind of ancillary to their main mission, but
as part of their, I think, employment training program, and eligibility for that program is not limited to a geographic. It's not just for people who go to one particular high school or live in one particular area. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze? For the second time.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. So one thing I want to draw people's attention to is that Operational Fresh Start, usually their program is 18 to 24. When we talk about driver's education, I'm specifically targeting 16 to 18-year-old. And I'm sorry that I'm proposing this at Warner Park rather than throughout the city, but as one of the alders of one of the underserved community, we're starting this as a pilot. As you already know, it's been taken out of high schools with 3 elementary schools and 3 middle schools. And yes, East High School is in my district. I'm real passionate about making sure that we get this pilot off the ground. I know that the education committee that my fellow colleague serves on emphasize that we should definitely get something like this going. So I'm really targeting the ones that are underserved community in my district. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I just want the record to show that I believe East High School is in District 12. Alder Madison?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just taking into consideration what Alder Evers is sharing. I guess I would I'm not sure who to email, but to strike out everything after the word lunch. And so just keep it with neighborhoods with an NRT and those qualifying for free and reduced lunch. I can't remember how many NRTs, but I thought it was about 6 of them.
There's more than that, but I'm not remembering the number. Is there any objection to taking that as part of the main motion? All right, seeing no objection, that will be part of the main motion on the substitute. Alder Rummel?
I would ask the alder if the last sentence would stay in or be also deleted.
Yes.
The parental involvement sentence would stay in.
Thank you.
I forgot about the parents.
All right, is everybody clear on the amendment then? Seeing no, Alder Curry.
For discussion?
Yes.
So I just want to thank the Alder for putting this forward, as well as the letter from the community, newly reworded City County Schools Collaborative Committee, and do think that these are noble things to put forward to support our youth. But despite that, and I think because of, actually I can't say that because we have an amendment on the floor, I struggle with voting yes for this, knowing that many of the community services that we already fund do provide support and programming to youth that would be identified in this amendment. As well as, I think I saw something earlier in the CDD's budget that there was included in this year's operating proposed a vehicle for the NO program that operates out of Warner Park. And so just looking at competing priorities, I do support our youth and I do think this is a noble effort, but I will not be voting in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadzi for the third or fourth time?
I think it's just the third time, Mayor, but I just wanted to say that vehicle that you just mentioned, President, was about Warner Park does not have a vehicle to transport kids, which a lot of community centers do, that they're in much need for. So that was something separate. So just wanted to touch base on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. So on the Madison amendment, firstly, all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and Dave will please call the roll.
Council President Curry? Council President Curry, no. Alder Verveer? Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitiver? Alder Vitiver, no. Alder Madison? Alder Madison, aye. Alder Evers? Aye. Alder Evers, aye. Alder Rummel?
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye. 4 ayes.
All right, with 4 ayes, that amendment passes. And I believe I'm enough of a parliamentarian to say we can move on. Alder Vitiver. Yes, can we have an update on the levy, please, Dave?
Remaining levy limit authority is $124,243.
Thank you. So that will take us to item Amendment 14. Amendment 14 is in public health regarding public health housing specialist and tenant services. Alder Madison, as a courtesy, would you make the motion, please?
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second? Second. Alder Curry will second. On item 14, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. So again, I understand that we have a lot of priorities here, and this one is a, like people keep on using novel idea. I think it is. I think again, we have as a city in collaboration with supervisors and elders, we have made many changes to continue to support our tenants. But again, we're failing on being able to communicate those new changes and to be able to empower people to take advantage of them. So this position, it was with the idea of dealing with the people that are already helping those struggling with their building managers or landlords. It was meant to be able to join forces with violence prevention to educate the team on the changes that the city has put forward to the Civil Rights Office, as well as the building inspection support. And it was meant to use that education and pass it on to other nonprofit groups so they can support the community in organizing and educating themselves on their rights as tenants. I understand there's a lot of priorities going on. There's another few amendments coming through from public health, working most of the week with the supervisor on this regard. She had made some changes on her side. So I am just kind of sharing the concerns and bringing awareness to the need to better educate our renter demographics. But there were changes made to the amendment, and we'll be trying to get them through the county level. So just here to share, to bring a light to the issue of the need for education and organizing for tenants' rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. On Amendment 14, are there questions? Or is there discussion? Seeing none. Alder Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. Working in housing and homeless issues, I appreciate the intent behind this amendment, as well as Supervisor Wegleitner's effort to join and combine in a tough budget season. Based on knowledge of some changes underway, as well as the synergy, I think, between this amendment and amendment number 17, I will not be voting yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further questions or discussion? Seeing none, then on Amendment 14, all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. And Dave will please call the roll.
Council President Curry? No. Council President Curry, no. Alder Verveer? No. Alder Verveer, no. Alder Vitiver? No. Alder Vitiver, no. Alder Madison? Aye. Alder Madison, aye. Alder Evers? No. Alder Evers, no. Alder Rummel?
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye. 2 ayes.
With 2 ayes, Amendment 14 fails. We'll go on to Amendment 15, which is also in public health regarding a bilingual public health nurse position. Council President Curry, a motion, please.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? Alder Vitiver will second. Council President Curry, do you wish to speak to this amendment?
I know when we reviewed the amendments, I shared that I was in support, but there was a different Alder. I don't have any knowledge to speak to this.
Alder Figueroa Cole, do you wish to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is coming from the Board of Public Health. We have a few speakers sharing their concerns on the areas of prenatal care. We had a presentation a few board meetings ago where we discussed how there's a huge need for this bilingual outreach to the community. I think Janelle is on the line, and she can give you more detail on respect to the specific programming that these particular positions are offering. But the program is already in place. They just have a waiting list. Everything is timing with this particular care. We have people on waiting lists, and by the time people get to it, they're already past the time where the prenatal care needs are supposed to be met. And again, the point of having someone that speaks the language to support an increasing population that is that have higher rates. The rates of infant mortality keeps on going up, and it's an issue that nobody's really talking about out there in the community. So I really strongly feel that we need to do better by this service and try to support it and try to get us ourselves again out of this waiting list. And I will appreciate, I would like to give the space for Janelle, if she's still on the line, to present some statistics that she provided earlier today, if that's okay.
Yep, thank you, Alder. Director Heinrich?
Yes. Hi, thank you. Thanks for your support with this amendment. We currently run two home visiting programs for moms at risk or people at risk of poor birth and pregnancy outcomes. In the last couple years, we've seen a significant increase in not only the number of referrals, but the complexity of the cases that we are managing. This program that we're asking for your support for another position is the Prenatal Care Coordination Program. It sees about, individuals who are not just in their first pregnancy, they could be in their second or third pregnancy as well. And we follow them for as soon as they come onto our wait list up till about 90 days postpartum. We have seen about, on average, around a little bit more than 30 individuals per month on our wait list in the last year. And that wait list, usually folks are on a wait list for 1 to 2 months. So the total amount of time someone might be with us may be 9, no more than maybe 12 months at the very most. So the sooner we can start really establishing a strong relationship with them, the better off we are, and in how we're supporting them through their critical pregnancy time.
Thank you, Janelle. Alder Vitever?
Janelle, I'm wondering can you share with us any outcomes data, like what percentage of the folks that are in the PNCC program are having, full birth weight babies, that are initiating breastfeeding, things like that?
I don't have all of that, I'm sorry, data in front of me, but we are seeing more of our clients. Right now, we have about 60 individuals on our caseload right now, which means we have about 30 waiting on that wait list at any moment in time. More of those folks, the sooner we can get them on the wait list or off the wait list, the more likely they are to be successful in that lower preterm birth rate. So I don't have the full conversion of the time of enrollment, the time of pregnancy, birth in front of me. I apologize.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa-Cole, did you have something additional?
Yes. So, I just want to add, if just to help maybe a little bit with the decision making out of for these 2 positions, for me personally, this is the most critical one. And I want to also bring to the body's attention that this is a position that is funded by both the county and the city. So it's contingent on each other's funding the full amount. So again, anytime that, my personal opinion, anytime that I can get funding from the county to come over and help us support the community, to me is a gigantic plus. So if we were to between the 2 positions, I think they're both very relevant and important, but this one is definitely critical, and especially serving a population that continues to grow when it comes to the language barrier. So I really hope that you guys support at least this one position for public health. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. Questions for Director Heinrich, please. So first of all, Janelle, I wanted to ask you, did this public health nurse position, or if you don't mind me asking questions about the next amendment as well at the same time, the public health specialist case abstractor position, were they included, either positions included in your budget request of the county? I know that they weren't technically included in your city agency request, which we have access to, but I wasn't sure about the county.
No, neither of these positions were requested in our initial submission.
And is that because the need only came to light more recently in the budget process, or were they just not higher priorities?
We have so many competing staff priorities, Alder. What we submitted was to try to balance all of those, and it's hard to pick which one is a higher priority. So we did submit the 2 medical interpreters because those can span multiple programs. This has been an increasing need since the early days of the pandemic, and when services kind of resumed in full, when we were seeing more referrals.
Thank you. And I certainly won't put you on the spot and ask you to, if you had to pick one between one amendment and the other, which one you would support. So don't worry about that question. I do have a follow-up question though, Janelle, and that is it possible in your estimation to use any of your, what I presume is still fairly healthy unassigned fund balance to fund, at least on an LTE basis, either of these positions? I know that, and I don't know what your unassigned fund balance is currently projected to be, but I know that it's all in the past been fairly robust, and the 2024 executive operating budget assumes that you'll be using that for other positions.
So I would say I think that's a policy decision that I wouldn't be upset with. We do have a fairly robust fund balance anticipated by the end of 2023 going into 2024. I think the question is when that fund balance is unable to be utilized and how do we sustain that beyond that. And I'll maybe ask Director Schmiedeke to jump in as well, but that is an option.
I appreciate that, and I'll probably impose on Director Schmiedeke in a moment to answer that as well. So just continuing, do you by chance know ballpark figure for what your current reserves are, what the fund balance is?
Excuse me. It's anticipated that we'll be at about $7 million by the end of this year.
$7 million. Okay. Very good. And does it make a difference to you if, in terms of using fund balance potentially for either of these positions? Again, apologies for jumping ahead to the next amendment presumed to be offered tonight, but would you feel that one or both would need to be offered as an LTE if we did use fund balance? And if so, is there recruiting concerns if they were advertised as LTEs?
So let me answer the second half of that question first,
Sure.
if you will. So I think the challenge that we face with these positions as LTEs is that the limited number of hours that is available and the work exceeds the number of hours in which we can offer to an LTE. So we know that these are full-time positions and we're unable to support full-time LTEs over the course of the year. Then I would say the question, things that we have proposed in the last couple of years are strategies that might support, sorry, there's movement around here, the application of fund balance to extend some of our project positions that are more time sensitive and limited in the funding streams.
No worries about the interruption. No worries about the interruption. There provides much needed levity for us here in the
Yes.
meeting. But
He is 11 and likes to try to get a little extra attention sometimes. So, I think that those are things that I would weigh, and how do we increase our overall staff capacity and resources, and what funding streams to apply to which positions is a larger policy conversation and discussion than just with me.
I appreciate that. I guess finally, for you, please, does the Public Health Department currently utilize the unassigned fund balance to fund full-time FTEs? Or are they, I know you have used them largely during the pandemic for LTE, COVID positions and so forth, but.
We, I didn't anticipate that question tonight, Alder, but we do have, I think, one or two positions supported by fund balance that are permanent positions currently, and the majority of the fund balance is used to support, when we use it, is for LTEs, as you mentioned.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know that the executive operating budget proposes using reserves for the new environmental health program manager, but I know that those funds are restricted. That's all licensing fee income, correct, Janelle?
Correct. We separate the licensing reserve separate from the general fund reserves.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And then, Mayor, if it's appropriate, I would like to ask the finance director to opine on this possibility, please.
Thanks, Alder Revere, for that question. I think we'd have to spend a little more time looking at it, but very generally, public health has added a number of positions since the pandemic, and there's no question about that. They've kind of increased their structure overall. They're trying to respond to, I think, a number of issues that clearly have been a part of what we've learned from the pandemic. Those are funded from one-time monies. namely federal grants and things like that. And at some point in the future, fund balance is going to have to be used to support those positions until we get to some point again in the future where do we have sufficient ongoing resources to support those positions. I think the other part of this is that use of fund balance involves a discussion with the county. You know, we can't just do that unilaterally by the city. And so I think all of those issues need to be kind of talked through and weighed when you think about how do you fund ongoing responsibilities. And I think the other, as Janelle alluded to, all the other priorities that they've already added positions for, and I think to some extent probably want to continue to add positions for in the future. So.
Understood. And just one follow-up, please, Dave. Am I correct that the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement, requires that both the city and county budgets be identical in terms of the funding source? I know for violence prevention, it's and other historic grants that we have funded for decades literally are 100% on the city levy. But I guess what I'm asking, put it another way, is if we adopted a budget assuming fund balance and the county board and the county executive adopt a budget assuming it's on the county levy for those residing, or those properties, I should say, outside of the city of Madison, is that lawful? Is either be under law or the IGA? Do you know?
I think that's
just too complicated.
That answer that kind of reflects the answer I already gave you, which is the city and the county have to be in agreement on how we're proceeding with using fund balance or however positions or other costs are funded within the public health budget. You're right, there are other sort of elements that may be in the public health budget that are only funded by the city, and public health only spends those dollars for city type programs. I think there are parallel type programs that are county funded separately, individually.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you, Mayor.
Alder Figueroa-Cole, I don't know if your hand is still up or up again. Thank you, Alder. Alder Madison?
Thank you, Mayor. I really just wanted to clarify, I think something Alder Figueroa-Cole said earlier. I just want to be sure that for Amendment 15, she said that the county would contribute $60,000 and the 55,420, of course, is on our end. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. This amendment anticipates the normal split of costs between the city and county that comprises the vast majority of the public health budget, which is split on that. The county share is 56%, and they would pay that. Alder Vitever.
So I want to be clear that I am not in conflict on this one because I'm employed by the State Division of Public Health, but I am absolutely biased. We have tremendous disparity in our infant mortality rates, particularly among Black and African American babies. It is reprehensible for a city and a county of our means and resources to have that kind of disparity. So I strongly support this budget amendment because this is an opportunity to bring healthy babies into the world. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Is there any additional questions or discussion? Seeing none, then on Amendment 15, all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no, as your name is called. And Dave will please call the roll.
Council President Curry? Council President Curry, aye. Alder Verveer? Aye. Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitever? Aye. Alder Vitever, aye. Alder Madison? Aye. Alder Madison, aye. Alder Evers? Aye. Alder Evers, aye. Alder Rummel?
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye. Unanimous.
With 6 ayes, that amendment will pass. And an update on the levy, please.
The remaining levy limit authority is $68,823.
Thank you. Then Amendment 16 is also in public health, regarding case abstractor position. Alder Madison, would you move this as a courtesy, please?
Sure. Motion to adopt.
Alder Madison will move. Is there a second? Alder Vitiver will second. Alder Figueroa-Cole, did you wish to speak to this?
Sure. I'm really struggling a little bit here with all these amendments. And obviously, I hope we can fund them all. But at the same time, the following amendment really has a huge priority on the community too. I want to echo all the developers' comment about bringing healthy babies into the world, but the following amendment is just keeps those babies safe. So at this point, I hope the Board of Health doesn't strangle me when I show up next time. I would like to just really perhaps focus on the next one and put the rest of the levy on that one for the violence prevention piece that we have in the list, if that's okay with the body.
Alder Figueroa-Cole, is that a request to withdraw the amendment?
I think so. I think there's no, I think the most important position was already passed, and I'm so grateful and appreciative of that. So I will withdraw this one, and hopefully we can support the next public health amendment.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers, let me ask first if there's an objection to allowing Alder Figueroa-Cole to withdraw the amendment. Alder Evers?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mayor. I guess I'd like to hear from Alder Vitiver on, who is a public health expert and seems to have a concern about this topic. We heard testimony from the community that both these amendments are important, and so I'm hesitant to let it go so quickly.
Thank you, Alder. Lacking unanimous consent, we'll continue discussion, and I'll ask again in a minute. Alder Vitiver?
Yeah, I was actually, so are we okay to go into questions and discussion then?
Yes.
Okay, all right, just double checking process. So actually, I was going to ask Director Heinrich to talk about what is required at the local level versus at the state level for these abstractions, which are absolutely critical to understanding what is happening when we have a very sad infant loss.
Director Heinrich?
Thanks for that inquiry. So as you may have heard from or recall hearing from one of the speakers earlier, the fetal and infant mortality review is a collaborative process that's led by the health department, and it is incredibly data heavy, and it requires someone to be in close relationship and constant contact with folks who hold the records that may be both the birthing person as well as the child's health records, to have access to that within a very short period of time after we are notified of a loss. And that is very different than when we are relying on the information to come through from the state that is not as comprehensive in data around the complete medical record for the individuals who are impacted. So we have folks who have had to, and sometimes because of the privacy concerns appropriate that we need to follow to support privacy for the medical records, we are often on site in our different hospital systems or partners who hold those records, whether it's the medical examiner, to comb through that information to pull together a profile around the experiences, comprehensive experiences, telling the story about the health and loss of this infant.
Thank you. There additional questions or discussion? So Alder Figueroa-Cole asked to withdraw. I'll ask again if there's objection to withdrawing. Seeing no objection, then Amendment 16 is withdrawn. And we will go on to Amendment 17, also in public health regarding violence prevention services for at-risk apartment buildings. President Curry, a motion?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? Alder Verveer will second. President Curry, do you wish to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So obviously, the amendment before us is proposing more than we have available, but I'm sure it's of no surprise to anyone that the Meadowlands Apartments is in my district. And part of my work and collaborative work has been working hand in hand with Public Health's Violence Prevention Unit to first just get some services over there, ideally prevent the public nuisance. We were unable to do that, but a team has been meeting, a multi-agency, multidisciplinary team has been meeting, and thankfully some providers have come in to provide service. I know a part of the narrative of this conversation is we need housing stock, and we need affordable housing. And the Meadowlands is just one example of one of those affordable developments. But in my time working closely with the Meadowlands, have been informed of other apartment buildings or developments throughout the city who are either at risk or have been put under a public nuisance declaration. Of most recent, I know in the news there's been talks of the Harmony, which is very close proximity, literally through an arbitrary intersection in proximity from the Meadowlands. And also looking at the fact that the Far East Side, if you look at my public or my city webpage, for instance, the community centers listed for the district are Goodman Community Center and the East Madison Community Center, which are not in any proximity to the neighborhoods, the schools, or the youth in these neighborhoods. The closest library, I think, is about 4.5 miles from the site. There also isn't even immediate I don't want to say transit or metro access, but access to a bus stop in proximity to the Meadowlands, for instance, is not right outside the door. It's through an underpass, a busy intersection at Milwaukee Street. And so I also want to point to the fact that this is not specifically affecting the Meadowlands, but there are other buildings that would benefit from this, and that it would go through Public Health's Violent Prevention Unit, which is already touching and doing this work and trying to reduce the risk of becoming a public nuisance or help mitigate those that are a public nuisance. Yeah, I think I'll stop there, but I will share more in discussion later. I guess the last point that I would want to share is that when we talk about public safety, we often gravitate towards those that we see and hear all the time, which is police and fire. And while this will not affect all citizens or all residents of the city of Madison, it will have a citywide impact. Right now, one of the highest users of Madison Police Services happens to be the Meadowlands. There was an additional cohort of officers that was approved in last year's budget that has been providing that. And while bridging the community's trust and relationship with police is something that I know we're focusing on, wanted to use the opportunity of budget amendments to get some actual services in there to provide our youth with some well-being, wellness, and also to hopefully prevent violence and gun violence and other forms of violence from being perpetuated. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. As the Alder noted, the dollar figure on this amendment exceeds the remaining levy limit, which is just over $68,000. So I would just point out that a substitute would be in order at some point.
And I did not have any alders, but now I do. Alder Vitiver.
This is actually a question about the next one, which is that one is a position. And so we would not be able to substitute that for a lower amount.
You're referring to Amendment 18?
Yes, the traffic signal electrician 2 position. So that's a position. So we would not be able to substitute a lower amount and make that quote unquote work because
That's correct.
It's a position.
That's correct.
That was the question I had. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers.
Are we in discussion right now, or are we in?
We just had
I put forth
the
an amendment, as
introductory.
you referenced, for $68,243. Is that correct?
You could move a substitute.
Yes, for that we would use the remaining
I would suggest
funds,
maybe 68,000 even.
68,000 even, and leave a couple $100 left. Yeah. But yes, please. Then I have a.
So Alder Evers will move a substitute to change the dollar figure to 68,000. Is there a second? Alder Curry will second. Alder Evers?
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder if the sponsoring alders, since several of our amendments with public health have drawn upon county sources of funds to augment, have there been discussions with county board supervisors who represent this area to also bring in some additional funds so that 68,000 could be doubled, perhaps?
Thank you, Alder. Certainly, alders can address that if they wish. Alder Madison is next.
That was my question, too.
Alder Madison has the same question. So Alder Figueroa Cole?
Yes, we had made some attempts to put these two amendments together, and Supervisor, I'm sorry, Heidi, I'm just going to say Heidi.
Wegleitner.
Wegleitner, okay, whatever. Put an amendment, actually updated her amendment, the one that I was putting forward for her on this evening. So she has amended hers not to need ours to pass. So it's not contingent on ours. I will share that amendment with you later tonight and send you the information on where you can go and testify at the county meeting, the finance county meeting, to ensure that that funding comes through.
Thank you, Alder. I just want to make sure for clarity for the body and for the record, what you're saying is Supervisor Wegleitner has offered a county amendment to provide some unknown amount of funding for this same purpose?
For a purpose that is targeting the same area with the renters advocacy included, but it's through violence prevention. So I truly believe there can be collaboration between the organizations helping this particular amendment and the one that she's working on. So I feel confident saying that yes, there's an amendment out there that will support the efforts that are being brought up by President Kerry.
Thank you, Alder.
It got a little bit complicated at the end there, and it was the last wire. So we're just moving in two different directions, but we're serving the same issues through the same channels.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak to Amendment 17. So on the
Sorry.
Alder Vitiver.
It's a related question.
Yeah.
So is it appropriate to create an amendment to this that says that this is contingent on county funding, or?
You could, but my understanding from what Alder Figueroa Cole just said is that the county doesn't actually have a sister amendment to this.
Yet.
That there is an amendment that would provide funds for similar constituencies, but it is not the exact same amendment.
Correct.
Alder Field?
Thank you. I have some comments to share on this amendment as a whole, but I wanted to see if folks were still confused about the relationship between this one and the county's amendment.
I think any clarity you would like to offer would be welcome, Alder.
Okay, so I have a draft of the county's amendment being proposed at Finance and Personnel. The amendment would amend Public Health's budget to add $100,000 to support amendments to contracts in 2024 of current Violence Prevention Unit 2023 grantees to support tenant capacity building. Funds would be made available to grantees interested in performing program activities to build tenant capacity, including but not limited to hiring a tenant organizer, supporting meetings of tenants to discuss their housing concerns, and training of the grantees and tenants they serve on housing rights and tenant organizing. It goes on to say, it goes on to reference this amendment at the dollar amount that this amendment was proposed at, which is no longer available. Notes that the City of Madison has a Budget Amendment 17 to fund community-based organizations to provide on-site services at apartment buildings that are under or at risk of public nuisance declarations. Funding under the city amendment would be made available to community organizations that were selected by Public Health's Violence Prevention Unit through a 2023 request for proposal for violence prevention services and align with Public Health's roadmap to reducing violence, which I think is the key piece here, and will include outreach to residents to develop program needs, and goes on from there.
Thank you, Alder. Did you wish to speak to the underlying amendment as well?
I did, yes. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to chime in support of this amendment and share my experience seeing the value of this work over the last couple of weeks. Most of you are probably aware of the tragic shooting and homicide of a 15-year-old girl at the Harmony Apartments in Grandsby Commons in my district nearly 2 weeks ago. The Violence Prevention Unit partners were on the scene right away to offer support to the families affected and to support the homicide victim's family as they went through the terrible days that followed. They are also busy at the property now helping organize residents and planning ways that residents can speak out about what they need from property management and about the community in order to make things better there. Violence prevention efforts are key to preventing retaliation or other future violence at the site and to making sure this never happens again. And I want to reiterate a previous speaker and a sponsor's point that this amendment is not just about 1 or 2 properties. Unfortunately, we do have other struggling properties in the city that may not have escalated to this point yet, but where any escalation of violence needs to be prevented. This amendment supports that work, and I urge my Finance Committee colleagues' support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa-Cole, your hand is still up, or perhaps again?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, Alder.
This week can end today, and I'll be happy with that.
All right, then I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak to Amendment 17. Just as a reminder, what's before us is a reduced budget line of $68,000. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and Dave will please call the roll.
Council President Curry. Council President Curry, aye. Alder Verveer. Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitiver. Alder Vitiver, aye. Alder Madison. Alder Madison, aye. Alder Evers. Aye. Alder Evers, aye. Alder Rummel.
Aye.
Alder Rummel, aye. It's unanimous.
With 6 ayes, Amendment 17 passes. And then on Amendment 18, a motion to place on file, please. President Curry.
Move to place on file.
Second. Alder Evers will second. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote to place Amendment 18 on file? Seeing no objection, that item is placed on file. And that brings us to the end of our amendments tonight. So on the executive operating budget as amended, are there questions or is there discussion? Seeing none, is there objection to recording unanimous vote in favor and sending the budget back to council? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor, and the budget will return to council for additional public hearing and debate. That is the balance of our agenda tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night.